Hello everyone, welcome to the second in the series of BSGCT online seminars. I'm pleased to introduce our talk today entitled Career Paths in Industry, both inside and outside the lab, delivered by Next Phase Recruitment Company in partnership with OXGENE. I've been in frequent contact with Steve Twinley from Next Phase for a couple of months now, so I know a lot of thought has gone into designing this talk, making it as informative and helpful as possible for us as ECRs. So I really encourage you to ask any questions that you have. So just some housekeeping. You can send us your questions during the talk using the live chat window. However, to use the live chat, you'll need to sign in using your YouTube or Google account. I will then relay these questions to our panel of Next Phase and OXGENE speakers at the end. Also, just to let you know that the live messages are not private, so just be aware. Please include your name and affiliation in your questions so the speakers can direct their answers back to you. And finally, if you have any suggestions on topics that you'd like us to cover, please do get in touch and we'll do our best to address them. So now I'll pass you on to Steve, who will introduce Steve Smith and James Hume from Next Phase and Circa from OXGENE. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much, Robin. And a very good afternoon to everyone who's joining us today, whether you're watching this live or whether you're going to be watching this later on YouTube. You're very, very welcome. And I know we've got a lot of people who signed up for this in advance. So I know we've got people who are studying PhDs, people who are working on postdocs. We've got master's students, got BSc students, and also we have a few of our clients joining us as well, who are going to be able to look at this from a very different perspective. And hopefully the Q&A will be particularly interactive because it'll be a chance for people to ask the kind of questions that you might have in the back of your mind about moving into industry. So from our clients' point of view, that'll be really insightful for them, I'm sure. So today's presentation is all about career paths in industry for people who up to this point have been working in academia. And we get a lot of inquiries from people, as you can probably imagine, as a recruitment business, from people who are working in academia. They want to explore other opportunities, and maybe they realize that there are skill sets that they can bring maybe from other experiences and that they can take into industry, but they're not quite sure what that's going to be, what it's going to look like. And we know that there can be some preconceptions about industry, moving from academia into industry. Some people might have thoughts that it might be a more restrictive environment, a more constrained environment. And to some extent that might be true. But our aim today is to try and give a bit of an insight, a bit of an introduction into what it's really like taking that step into industry, whether you want to remain in the lab and continue to develop those skills that you've been building, or whether you want to maybe explore other avenues, because a lot of these job roles are things that you won't probably have encountered before, and it might not be clear exactly how you go down that route. So we're going to try and introduce that a little bit today. And then, of course, the Q&A will be a chance for you to ask some specific questions, but then I would openly invite you to engage with us afterwards. So as a bit of an introduction before I pass over to the others, we are Next Phase. We are a life science recruitment agency, very long established, and we work in partnership with a range of pharmaceutical businesses, biotech companies, cell and gene therapy companies, rare disease organizations, and medical device companies. So we have a very privileged position of being able to guide people through their careers at different stages, whether they're coming into industry for the first time or whether they are in senior management roles themselves already. So it gives us I guess, a very good perspective on for today. And what I'm particularly excited about today is that we're going to have a few different perspectives. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll have learnt some valuable things, or at least have some ideas in your mind about where to go from here. So as far as the sort of where we want to sort of come from here is that there are various different routes available to you. And first of all, we want to talk a little bit more about the industry as a whole. So what's so exciting about the cell and gene therapy industry? And I want to say a massive thank you to Robin and to Emma and to the team at BSGCT for helping us to put this together. Because I think what the BSGCT does as an organization, and also this early careers initiative as well, it gives people some amazing resources to explore themselves. And so this is an extension of that. And The first person I'm going to be passing over to today is a chap called Steve Smith. Now, Steve Smith is a highly experienced senior recruiter within the life science sector and does a lot of work with startup businesses, a lot of work with sort of building leadership teams of younger startup companies who may be securing investment, but he also works with more established organizations in the gene therapy sector. So as a result, he has a very broad overview of the industry. He's seen how different companies have emerged over the last few years and the different career opportunities that that can provide. So he's going to get, hopefully, everyone very excited about the opportunities in industry as a whole. And just, I mean, it's such an enormous sector to be a part of. We're then going to be passing over to James Hume, who is a senior recruiter also within Next Phase. He's been with Next Phase for about 7.5 years and has made literally hundreds of placements of people moving into industry. So he has a lot of experience of guiding and coaching people through different career paths. So what James is going to do is he's going to work through a range of different career opportunities, things that with a particular focus on the non-lab side of things. So, for example, project management, business development, quality assurance, IP, a variety of things that people might have heard of, but maybe don't know too much about. So we're going to give a little bit of insight into what it's like to forge a career in those areas, likely salaries, and the types of organizations you might want to go into to develop your career in those ways. And then perhaps the most exciting part of this afternoon is we're going to be passing over to Serka Bangham, who is the head of HR at OXGENE. And some people might have heard of OXGENE in one way or another. You might have also heard of them in their previous name, which is Oxford Genetics. And they are a very, very exciting business. And the kind of approach that they're taking is really indicative of some organizations who are at the forefront of attracting people, or attracting talent from academia and nurturing them and identifying what specific skills they can bring that may lend them to other career opportunities they hadn't even considered before. And just as an example, they've taken on, I think it's about 3 weeks ago, they've taken on 9 interns, which is a fantastic initiative. It shows just how forward-thinking OXGENE are as an organization, bringing people in from academia. And so Serka is going to go into a little bit of detail about the personality traits that people might need to demonstrate to really impress hiring managers when they come in for interview. So hopefully that's going to give you a really interesting insight from a different perspective, almost on the other side of the fence, as it were. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Steve Smith in a minute, but just to reiterate, if you have particular questions as this goes on, we're going to be saving all of the questions for the Q&A section at the end, which is in about 3/4 of an hour. So please feel free to use the box on that side of the screen, I guess, which is the YouTube chat, as was said earlier. So I'm going to pass over to Steve Smith. I hope you enjoy, and we look forward to hearing some comments afterwards.
Great, thank you, Steve. So I'll do my best to try and get you guys excited, if I can, about the opportunities that are out there. Just by way of introduction to lead on from Steve. So I've been recruiting within the pharma industry in one way or shape or another for about 12 years. My role within Next Phase is to help cell and gene biotechs, CMOs, farmers, etc., to build their boards and leadership teams. And for the earlier stage startups, including those spinning out of academia, to help them attract investors to their businesses as well by consulting on their commercial plans, their current knowledge base within the business, personnel within the business, etc., in order to really get them investor ready and make subsequent introductions to investors in the space as well. So it's the people and the money side really. So I'm not so involved with individuals making the leap per se from academia to industry, and more so the businesses themselves. So I certainly won't pretend to be the expert there, and we'll leave that to Mr. Hume next. However, what I intend to do is just really give quite a quick overview of the cell and gene market, past, present, and future, to try and give you a sense of just genuinely how much of a really rare and quite momentous opportunity it is that you all have now to really build futures in this sector over the coming years, because it is, you know, these types of opportunities in sectors don't come around kind of every day. It's not a completely comprehensive overview. However, I've picked some of the more familiar stories and appropriate milestones that should hopefully help paint a picture of things. So moving forwards, I'll start with the past. I will scoot over this bit quite quickly, but ultimately, up until recently, the cell and gene world as a whole, both privately and publicly, has been a story really of sci-fi and scrutiny. So again, there's lots of stories, but some of the more famous ones go back to Dolly the sheep, the first mammal cloned from an embryo, way back in the 90s. Then we had in 2000, Adam Nash, the world's first designer baby, as it's been labeled, was actually born. He was born on ethical grounds. It was actually to use his umbilical cord to use his stem cells to treat his ill older sister. However, still there was lots of scrutiny and lots of bad public press around efficacy and things like that. Moving forwards, Dr. Tony Perry, one of the kind of pioneers, early pioneers from Bath Uni, I believe, started to suggest that we talk about the concept of designer babies and start having serious discussions around them. And then off the back of these things, and leading up to 2017, some of you may remember there was a huge media storm that erupted around efficacy and the use of gene editing and all that kind of thing. And then even more recently, oh, I've gone one too far. There we go. Even more recently, in the last couple of years, so in October 2018, the world's first babies born from CRISPR edited embryos were born in secret. It was then exposed, and a scientist there on the right, He Jiankui, if that's how I pronounce it, was actually fired in January 2019 and then actually jailed in China and given a huge fine for bad practice and illegal practices and things like that. So up until very, very recently, you know, it's really been, as I say, sci-fi and scrutiny. It's been quite a rough ride for our sector and our industry, certainly in the public eye. And you know, lots of things threatening the prospect of a future where cell and gene therapy can really, you know, transform healthcare around the world and do good. It's been a lot of focus on the bad, not the good. And arguably that would probably have contributed to the reason there wasn't that much investment going into the industry from new investors. Even the more traditional pharma and biotech investors in the industry were still, you know, a bit hasty in giving up their cash to support this really, really early stage of the cell and gene sector. However, in the background, whilst also all of this kind of stir of sci-fi and scrutiny was going on, there were the pioneers that were working very, very hard to kind of carve out a route for transformation and growth to take place within this sector through their joint committed R&D efforts. So if we move on to the now and the future, or the recent and the future at least, there's really been some major positive milestones that have been hit and publicized, which has really now acted in the last couple of years as a major catalyst for growth in the sector, which really presents huge opportunities for you guys. So just to give a timeline on some of these things, first of all, products coming through to the market. Now, when investors look at products, they're obviously looking from a strong commercial standpoint. So as of 2016, we had the first cell and gene therapies really coming through to market. So Biogen launched Spinraza in the UK. That was for the treatment of a horrific rare inherited genetic disease called SMA. GSK also launched Strimvelis, a cell therapy. And then moving forward in 2017, Kymriah was launched by Novartis. That was the world's first CAR T to be launched, which is a huge area for our industry. Using CAR T within immuno-oncology is a huge sector of this sector in itself. In the same year, Kite also launched Yescarta, another CAR T and a direct competitor to Kymriah, interestingly. Then moving forwards into 2018, this was a big moment, really. For the industry, which I'll speak a bit more about in a second, but Luxturna was launched in collaboration with Spark and Novartis. Luxturna was the world's first FDA-approved gene therapy for a rare retinal disease. I think it was called choroideremia, and it was actually also the world's most expensive drug, coming in at $800,000 per treatment, so per eye, if a patient had it in each eye. and we'll come on to that a bit more in a second, actually. But then in 2019, so only last year, Avexis launched in the UK also gene therapy for the treatment of SMA. And this year, Kite have launched another CAR T called Tecartus, and we're also expecting, I think, early next year, Autolus to also launch a competing product as well with, I'm not sure if it's with Tecartus, but certainly Kymriah and Yescarta as well. So there's a number of interesting things here that add to the story that this is an exciting time to really make that leap into industry. So first of all, going back to Luxturna, whilst it's the most expensive drug, that obviously interests investors because the money is obviously there, but also, well, the reason it's so expensive is because it's for a rare disease. So where there's a low patient number, obviously drugs are much more expensive and the reimbursement costs are more expensive to recoup all of that R&D money that they've spent. But more importantly, we're fast approaching 8,000 known rare diseases, of which around 70% are believed to be genetic. So the market potential in rare diseases alone, forgetting the high prevalence areas, is phenomenal, and we've really not even scratched the surface. There's only a handful of rare genetic diseases being looked at as of right now. So just in rare diseases, it's huge. As well as that, there's a number of products here that you'll notice are competing with each other. So even in this early stage, there's willingness to compete in certain areas, which is a sure signal that it's a market that must be worth investing in. So all of these things added together obviously paints a picture for phenomenal growth. So moving forwards, or kind of in parallel with these product launches in the last few years as well, there's also been a number of industry-driven media that have been put out into the market and put out into the public space that have caught the attention of industry and the public. So again, going from left to right, in 2016, the BIA and ARM launched a report that confirmed that investment, this is the UK by the way, investment in advanced therapy companies grew 66% year on year, which is unprecedented in an industry. The numbers are fairly small, 473 million to 785 million, but the fact it's so small means there's more opportunity for growth as we continue. They also said there's over 70 advanced therapy developers active in the UK, 56 with their HQ here, 93 UK clinical trials going on, including 27 sponsored by UK companies. Catapult also published their 5th annual report that year. And they confirmed that manufacturers are struggling to keep pace with global demand because things are growing so quickly. There was an increase in full-time hires by 40% in the manufacturing space alone. And in March 2018, which is very interesting, the first academia industry ATMP apprenticeship scheme was launched, funded by Innovate UK, £1.5 million. And it was a collaboration between the University of Kent and MMIP, who managed to sign up some leading industry names. So Oxford Biomedica are part of it, Autolus are part of it, GSK are part of it, Cobra Biologics, Replimune, Allergan. There's some really pioneering names in that list that they've managed to get on for a 3-year pilot scheme for apprenticeships to tackle the talent gap ultimately. And then in 2019, Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult have another press release saying that investment in the UK cell and gene therapy manufacturing market is set to continue. 6,000 meters squared of additional space was expected in the next 12 months last year, which they did hit, by the way. And manufacturing staff doubled again in 1 year from 500 to 1,000 people in the UK alone. And it was predicted to grow by another 6,000 jobs by 2024, again in the UK alone. Stevenage also reported in 2017 that the UK actually accounts for around 12% of all cell and gene clinical trials globally, about 127, which was nearly a 50% increase versus the year before. So again, huge growth. And they also reported that the NHS and UK ecosystem are providing the right platforms to really now allow innovative therapies to progress through the clinic in ever increasing numbers. And that's really, really important, because one of the downfalls of many other nations globally, and one of the reasons that the UK is at the forefront and has so much, has such an increased and significant chunk of the pie right now, is because the government has really backed getting infrastructure into place through the likes of Catapult and other collaborations that are going on. So that's really, really important to have that ecosystem available in any given country. And then bringing it into this year, so 2 reports this year. So first of all, LifeArc and the MRC announced a call for bids for a £16 million pot to create what they are calling gene therapy innovation hubs. And one of the objectives that's listed on their bid is to train and retain expert staff, growing the talent pool to fill the new high value jobs which will be created and required by both SMEs and industry as well. So that is a core objective, to actually train and retain expert staff in the space. And finally, this year as well, ARM published a global report, not just UK, confirming that in the first half of this year alone, there was $10.7 billion invested into the space. And they were very much on target to beat the previous record of $13.5 billion to date, which was actually in 2018. $1.4 billion worth of IPOs happened in the first half of the year as well. So companies are actually going public now in this space, and that was 2.5 times larger than the whole of 2019 alone. There are over 1,000 advanced therapy developers now in the world. The UK remain at about 12%, and 415 of those are actually in the clinic. So I've reeled off quite a lot of facts there, and I appreciate that maybe information overload. But ultimately, the story is, for you guys that are just looking to jump from academia into industry, it's a momentous opportunity. It's a very, very small market, and we're experiencing exponential growth. And from a talent perspective, it means there's an extreme high demand for talent and an extreme low supply of talent. So for you guys that are just looking to make that jump, there's lots of options: rapid career growth, cutting edge, world changing technology that's out there waiting for good skills to come in and help develop. And it really is a chance to really, I suppose, make a mark and have a genuine impact on what is looking set to be an industry that's going to have a transformational impact on healthcare all around the world, really. So with that in mind, and moving on, I shall now hand over to James to talk about those options for you.
Right, good afternoon. Thanks, Steve, for that introduction and kind of oversight into the sector as a whole. To introduce myself, 7 years experience of recruiting within the cell and gene therapy sector, really focused on that translational science, which includes that R&D, translational, GMP manufacture. So this covers roles both inside out and outside laboratories. And the key thing, all these positions I'm about to run through with you are ones I've successfully recruited for over the last 7 years. So there really are those opportunities to transition from academia into industry. Key thing for me is all of these include the chance to use science every single day, and maximise all that effort you've put into that studying and training you've conducted so far during your career. And following on from what Steve described, there are so many different opportunities, an excellent time, and the opportunities of recruiting in terms of volume, but also specialist areas are always opening up, and you're in an excellent position to find the right opportunity for you. And that, again, is key when you're starting your job search. But for me, what I'm going to do is give you a brief overview of the different areas that are available to you. There's lots of different individual pathways and salary ranges that vary within these. Again, high-level overview. So, of course, if you want to have a bit more of an in-depth conversation, yes, we can certainly do that at another time. But just to get a little bit more context, we'll dive into the roles. Is that, yes, increasing number of companies, that's very, very clear. Need those niche skill sets you provide, not always available in a number of different ways, whether that's newly graduated as a BSc scientist, or even the way through to an experienced postdoctoral scientist. And when you actually move into these companies, there is a lot of this is talking about those immediate positions you'll secure. But beyond that, there are pathways. Companies have designed pathways and succession plans to enable you to progress in whether you want to become more specialist, for example, or move into leadership with HR teams dedicated to learning development, or even in some cases just a manager who's come in to bring all these systems up to date. So definitely is an opportunity to progress beyond these initial positions that we'll be talking about today. And yeah, best way to describe it, in lab and outside labs, are certainly that's a very good place to start, and certainly hopefully will give you some food for thought. So really want to start with the inside laboratory opportunities. I guess this is in some ways the most logical pathway moving into research development. Very much, I guess, continuing what you've developed, whether that be in your dissertation or PhD and so on. But certainly over that last 7 years, I've experienced what were niches and now whole departments, and there are new niches will soon be whole departments. And this is across the whole translational area, from that very early stage discovery all the way through to GMP manufacture. So yeah, beginning with these science positions, so these tend to be opportunities for those with a master's or a BSc degree, where you'll be part of, I guess, simplistically R&D programs, but that enables you to gain exposure to move forwards. So starting with these salaries, yeah, they do vary. So 20 to 25,000 pounds per year, depending on what degree you've got and the experience and maybe subsequent experience since graduating. But the traits they look so for companies look for that passion for research. That's key. They always want to know why you're interested in them, why you're into their technology. That's really got to come across. You buy into that company and that desire to learn new concepts. Science positions generally they are more generalist and broad in scope, so more multidisciplinary, so giving you the chance to use a range of skills each day to give that grounding to move forwards. Typically you're not necessarily going to be pigeonholed. You will have the opportunity, and generally these are roles where you'll be able to be involved in broader research, won't be on one specific area, and have that chance to apply that science and again use those new techniques. And typically you'll be working with senior and lead scientists, have exposed to projects and how they're developed, and have influence as well. I think that's important. You always have a voice. And yeah, some of these key ways are generally you'll be able to give presentations, deal with collaborators, perhaps go to conferences, all sorts of ways. But certainly scientists, yes, you'll definitely have a great opportunity to move into interesting, exciting research. And really the next path from here, stereotypically, is into a senior scientist position. Yeah, I mean, these, first of all, just to be clear, companies are recruiting at senior scientist level directly from industry. There used to be the whole, you need industrial experience. That's been removed because what's prized is your technical ability, that real specific scientific skills you have, but also you would have been exposed to mentorship, supervision as well, and project-focused work or collaborative work. Those are skills that can be built upon. And also, these roles are more and more being designed to be that first step on the path to leadership, or beyond that into more technical niche area. So yeah, the salaries as they are, they tend to be typically start at £38,000 to £45,000, depending on your level of experience. Again, the reason why they look for those like yourselves is part of that skills gap, but also that recognition of the abilities you'll be able to bring. And as a senior scientist, you're on that first step to leadership. So companies are set up to give you that ability to take the next step up. So that will include management, driving projects through in laboratories, again, dealer collaborators on a higher level, using quality by design principles in the setting up of projects and scopes, and really have that ownership and influence on those. So I think that's key, because you actually work a lead scientist, or even a group leader on a project, but you'll then have the ability to say, no, this is what we should be doing, and they'll certainly listen to you. But also, you'll be working with business development, project managers, looking at costing, scoping, due diligence milestones. There'll be a whole range of things you'll be able to be involved in to give you that exposure to then take the next steps forward, depending on how you want your career to develop, which I think is really, really key in every position that you're looking for. So that's kind of research and discovery, I guess, quite simplistically, how you can enter those roles, but also progress. But another area that wasn't always open is GMP-focused opportunities. So this is good manufacturing practice. These are the very stringent, very direct regulations required when you're manufacturing these therapies for release to clinical trials. I guess that speaks for itself. But as therapies develop further and move into GMP environment and manufacturing for clinical trials, there's greater need for those skill sets that you've developed that are technical and required to really ensure that these very complex products actually are manufactured and released on time. So companies are moving away from needing that direct GMP experience because you can be trained on that. That's something that you can certainly be trained on. And why they need these skills, because, for example, within quality control, so this is the department that they are testing these therapies while they're being manufactured. So whether that's during the process to make sure they're all okay, there's no impurities in there, for example, but also just before to release to make sure all the boxes are ticked. That type of testing needs skills that perhaps are beyond the reach of those already in the market. So, for example, could be photometry. That's a very common one currently. And what happens is the shape of the team is you'll have you as an expert SME with others around you more GMP focused. So as a team, you make sure these therapies are released on time. Of course, manufacturing is a key one. We're talking about lots of different processes within there, but before I get lost in that, again, they're complex. Very similar to mirror what quality control teams are doing. Have you as an expert, whether that be on a particular type of cell culturing, for example, or even a particular type of cell biology or molecular biology technique, or immune cell processing, but they'll have you there as an SME with those who are more operationally focused around you so that as a team, you work together to ensure everything's on track, keep things moving forward. Again, what's important is that in these positions, you use your science, traits similar, that passion, that drive for research, that real hunger to learn more. And those will make you stand out during the interview process. And there are a lot of companies who are developing drives or are currently under drives to secure talent to, as their manufacturing expand. There's recent opportunities in this area, and it's certainly a very, very fascinating one for you. And one you may not say first of all thought of. Again, the format typically follows that scientist or senior scientist level. So the sort of more entry level there at 22 to 26,000 pounds per year, again straight in, may not necessarily need too much experience, whereas at senior level, again, they value that the technical skills you've developed during your PhD and postdoctoral to be able to bring that expertise as a subject matter expert. So definitely worth looking at opportunities. You will use your science, you won't be pigeonholed, and they are, again, strong career paths as discussed. So outside the lab, my managing director, Steve Twinley, certainly hinted that there are a lot of opportunities outside the laboratories. Ones may not always thought of, but they do prize your skills. Definitely want to get that across. And these opportunities, they vary widely, whether that's been sales through to intellectual property, but I'll come to that in a minute. But there's a lot to be said for taking part outside the laboratory. You don't lose your ability to use your science. Rapid career progression as well. Some of them, sales, you'll be internationally traveling depending on how the situation changes in the future as well, but certainly is rewarding careers going forward. So I guess starting this off, sales and business development, look, the salaries as they are there, you can see they tend to offer slightly higher, again, at entry level there and the senior level, but there's several variations of business development within the sector, but simplistically, sales roles. So they are promoting services or products to customers, different media channels, so phone, conferences, video call, face-to-face when we get back to that. But there are an increasing number of companies that need your technical expertise. The reason why is because you can better promote those complex products better than anyone else because you understand them. You can actually have a long conversation around them. The services themselves, wow, they do vary, but to keep it simple, they offer specific expertise either in a particular area, so it could be manufacture, it could be process development, or even really specific like gene editing, for example, or they could offer specific cell lines or antibodies used for GMP environments or research. But so that's kind of where the roles sit. The traits needed, look, they need people who are outgoing, who are confident, strong personalities, but have that ability to change how you communicate and be flexible in that, and have that real interest in people. But money is quite an easy way, because you do get commission packages on top of this as well. So that is an interest for you. Certainly, there's no shame in that, and can be very lucrative, but they are challenging. Typically, you'll start out as a team, part of a team could be either dealing with queries, could be on administrative focus, mapping sectors. Really, that enables you to gain that understanding of how the processes work, to then again, once you gain that experience and become successful, to move up into more direct sales positions, where you're leading campaigns, or very much looking at the next gap and so on. So yes, lots of different ways you can develop, and that sort of example is more sort of direct. There are the more softer sales, consultative. Cell and gene therapy Casper, a great example, where they're looking for companies that they can collaborate with, bring their projects on board, enter collaborative R&D projects are funded by different bodies. In these type of positions, again, you're using your science, so you're understanding that company, what they're doing, their technology, does it have potential to then bring that on board, looking at due diligence, also being exposed to intellectual property as some basic ways as well. So certainly sales and business development, I mean, that's just a snapshot, giving you some very high level, just throwing a few job titles and bits at you. But there's a lot of different opportunities. You will use your science, and there's a lot of companies who need those skills. So moving on to medical communications, excuse me. This again is a sector that has many different nuances within it. These are all crucial to companies promoting themselves, getting their exposure, so everyone knows who they are and the exciting things they're doing. Think about those companies that were first listed during Steve Smith's introduction, where they've actually got these products launched. There's a whole lot goes behind that, and medical communications is a key part of that. Again, the salaries tend to be slightly increased because of, well, the responsibilities that are included within in these positions. Again, the traits needed, that ability to write, that's obviously written and verbally, depending on the format, but is able to write creatively. I think that's key. Communicative is important, but also able to take complex scientific information, translate that and put it to English, so that those who maybe not quite so educated can understand it as well. Again, those are skills that can be demonstrated through different interview processes. They'll give you tasks, etc. But again, that can be discussed at a different time, should it be relevant for you. Medical communications, it tends to form more that commercial arm. So work at business development, for example, is a key one. But again, you get to use your science, strong career development, and really give that platform to, well, express yourself, certainly. Then moving on to something slightly changed tack, but it is within that commercial arm of a lot of companies. And intellectual property, this is increasingly more and more important and well known, with whole companies having whole teams dedicated to this. Of course, there's law firms specialising in this area as well, not to exclude those. And salaries at this level again are slightly increased. So there's 24 to 26, those entry levels, and senior, that 36 to 35. Again, you'll be able to use your science. That's key. You've got to have that technical ability, because a lot of companies are generating inventions each and every day. They need to be spotted, understood, protected, and then also developed as well. And traits within this area are, yes, that strong science, that's a key, but added to that is that strong analytical capabilities. Really able to look at what's happening, understand it, and say, right, that is an invention. Again, communication, you're dealing with lots of different teams. Should it be directly with scientists? It could be with a legal person, for example. So quite broad, different types of mindsets there, and that ability to be very, very organized. Initially, again, just to give you a bit of an understanding, these roles will generally have like an administrative focus, being on like filing, preparation of documents, contracts, just to help familiarize yourselves with those terms you may not have come across before. But again, designed to give that exposure to move on to, well, either a more senior position, more technical positions, exposed to terminology, chain of title, exclusivity, for example, and all that machinations of IP management. Just to highlight one very recent example, talking to one scientist who actually had an invention that's now been progressed forward to a patent, and that's not irregular. So IP, we worked very closely with her to ensure that, well, that was completed. And I mean, for her, that's a great bit to have on your CV. So you may well actually be interacting with someone from intellectual property management, depending how things look for yourselves. But certainly a very key area, and one where you will be able to find opportunities with your experience. So then the next area is quality assurance. So this reverts back to GMP, those environments that are manufacturing these therapies for use in clinical trials or even commercially. And again, this is outside laboratories, typically speaking, but you've got a very close link to the laboratories who are doing the quality control or manufacturing. To begin, the salaries, depending on that qualification, 24 to 28 and 38 plus. Again, traits needed, analytical skills, yes. Ability to write technical documents, certainly. Communication, I do put that lots, but it is key. But again, they like to see that passion, certainly, when going through interview processes, and I think that's key as well to understand what's happening there. Quality assurance department, these departments are to ensure that all regulations are being adhered to, so that the product is safe to be sent out, it's safe for patients to be used for patients, and also a lot of documentation involved in that to track exactly what's happening. And it changed from where quality assurance used to be quite a block on things. Actually, now it's actually completely opposite. They're seen as facilitators, so to ensure that compliance is maintained while these innovative technologies actually are progressed. Because a lot of the times these are throwing up new things that hadn't been considered by the regulatory bodies, such as the MHRA or FDA. It's certainly an influential department. There's lots of different niche areas or more generalist areas, depending how you want to progress. Whether that be sort of, again, leadership or more technical. But key things, you will be able to use your science, understand what's happening in the laboratories to then look at what process went wrong, for example, and then why that went wrong, and then what needs to be put in place to correct it, is simplistically speaking. So again, that's why you need your technical understanding. The next area is informatics and data science, once everything catches up with me. This area could almost be a whole separate function itself, where you may well have done this as part of your education or research, or that's in your entire focus. But there are a lot of companies looking for these skill sets. Over the last 7 years, bioinformatics, AI, data science was just emerging. Now all of a sudden companies are wholly dedicated to this, through to actually is a key part for every company actually developing technology. But to bring it back, the salaries, yes, start at 24 to 28,000 pounds per year, at the more junior end, and senior at 38 to 45,000 pounds per year. But those traits needed, those analytical thinking, the ability to analyze complex problems, strong data management capabilities, but you don't necessarily need to have lots and lots of experience. Companies are looking for those where you might have done some simple programming as part of your dissertation, for example, or it might be part of your research, looking to take those skills and build on those, using that broader scientific understanding as well. I think that's important. So yes, those opportunities are out there, whether that's your sole focus of study or just part of it. And I think for me, I find it fascinating, this area, way the scientists I'm thinking speak, the capabilities of it. And the fact is, it's really just scratching the surface. There's so much more to be discovered here. But with the pathways, so you'll start off in a more generalist position, or could be more niche. However, then you'll be able to develop from there. Again, following very similar in-lab opportunities where you move to a senior scientist or a senior level, but also more technical niche area. And often I found scientists tend to go more niche because there's just so many myriad ways you can develop, whether it's a programming language, or a particular type of technology. But it's becoming an area that has gone from a niche to a huge sector in itself. So lots of opportunities in there should you wish to choose that path. Then finally, project and program managers. Again, this is an area that every company will have within themselves, whether it's just a small area or a whole team's developed to it. But I kept it separate because it does overrun with some of the others within this whole inside or outside lab opportunities. And for example, the traits realistically are multitasking, adaptability, flexibility, able to deal with changes quite quickly, and that strong scientific knowledge. The reason why that's important is it will help you communicate with scientists who are developing these these therapies, you need to keep them moving, you need to understand where they are and be able to communicate that to relevant partners. And it's whether that's just within R&D through to manufacturing, it's key to ensure milestones are achieved, to ensure these therapies reach patients. For example, look at GP manufacturing. That's a complex process. You need to move through different steps, through to dealing with relationships with collaborators, for example, who are doing a specific project externally. Again, I can't stress enough how key it is within all these different environments. And certainly I'm recruiting more and more for project managers, whether it be very junior through to very senior. Some are hugely influential in the direction and success of businesses. So it is an excellent career. Again, use your science day in, day out. And often you'll start off in that administrative function, grow from there as your experience builds up. But that's kind of a brief overview of everything. Before I hand on to Circa, I guess realistically, you're in a wonderful position to be able to really develop that career as you see fit and make that right choice for you. And that's key. So hopefully you found it informative. But before I go off, I'll pass on to Circa and speak to you soon.
Thanks, James. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Circa Bangham, and I have my parents to thank for my most unpronounceable name. I'm currently the head of HR at OXGENE. I joined the company just the beginning of September. Really, really exciting company to come and work for. We're going to do our company plug here, and we are recruiting. But our company is very exciting. So OXGENE focuses on technology, platforms and solutions that accelerate the discovery, the development and the manufacture of cell and gene therapy. So really exciting company to join. So do go and have a look at our careers page. What I wanted to do today is rather than go through my career history, and I'm totally aware that you can stalk me on LinkedIn should you choose to do so, I wanted to give you an insider view on the kind of things that when I'm recruiting and interviewing, what I'm looking for in candidates, especially when they are coming out of academia and looking to move into a commercial environment. So I think a good place to start is with some key interview tips. So if you are currently in academia and if you're looking to move into industry or into more of a commercial environment, there are some questions which you are bound to get asked. And one of those is, how do you think industry is going to differ from working in academia? And also, people will want to know, what are your motivations? So why do you want to come? Why do you want to leave academia? Why do you want to come and work for us? And the key area here is I would really encourage you to focus on the pull factors. So focus on all of the positive things that you think working in a commercial environment will give you, rather than all the negative things that are pushing you out of academia. So the kind of answers that I've received in the past from candidates that have really stuck out are things like people and individuals who've identified that they want to be involved in the full product life cycle, right through from inception on the bench all the way through to that product going out into the hands of the end users. Other individuals have talked about wanting to work on technology that has real world applications and real world impacts that they can see, that is very visible. So to really have that connection with the end user. Another great response has been people who demonstrate that they want to work on a technology with purpose. So it's really been very clear about what the opportunities are that you think a commercial environment or industry can offer you that perhaps you're not going to get in an academic environment. So really focus on those pull factors rather than those push factors. The other question to be prepared for is what I would call the dreaded, where do you see yourself in 5 years question. Now, from a personal point of view, I absolutely hate this question because I have no idea what I'm going to have for dinner, let alone what I'm going to be doing for the next 5 years. And yet there are lots of people that have been on interview training that insist on asking this question. In interview, I do want to understand somebody's motivations and someone's passions. So what's driving them? So the question that I would ask is, how would you like to see your career develop, or how would you like to see your career progress? So it's the same type of question. We can just ask it in a slightly different way. You might not know, and that's perfectly fine, but an interviewer, and certainly from my point of view, I want to see that you thought about it. And for me, regardless of what position you're moving into, whether it's a receptionist, whether you're going in as scientist, or whether you're going in as chief technical officer, your first port of call should be, I want to understand the business. So you're coming out of academia, you're coming into industry. The real focus there, so the great candidates have said, I want to come in and understand what it is that you do. So that's getting an understanding of the technology, getting an understanding of the products, of our customers, current and future, the market that we're operating in, who are our competitors, what are the business objectives, what's the aim for the company, how do things work here, so get a real sense of the business, so that when you come in and you've got a sense of that, you know how to make valuable contributions. So really the starting point is, I want to understand the business. Then thinking about how your career develop, you can start to think about expanding your knowledge set, your skill set, potentially taking on more areas of responsibility, whether that's leading a project or leading a team or leading a function. You don't have to say that you want to be a manager. And the other thing I'm conscious of in the where do you see yourself in 5 years question is that for me, I've always wanted the job that the person who asked me that question has. And if I told them that, I probably wouldn't have got the job, because they first of all think, well, I quite like my job. I don't really want you to have it. Or if they do recruit me and they're going to micromanage me and look over my shoulder because they think I'm going to usurp them. So it's just thinking about career growth and career development. So for you, great starting point for any role you're coming in, and regardless of where you are in your career, your first step is always, I've got to understand the business in order to be able to make a valuable contribution. So have a think about those questions before going into interview. And in every company that I've worked in, these questions have come up, or questions like this. So it's worth having a think about them. Once you've then gone into your interview, it's very exciting, because there are lots and lots of opportunities for you to move into. So the days of the career ladder are gone, which is great, because that was an absolutely shocking visual. The concept of a career ladder where you could only move up or down was shocking and wasn't representative of anyone's career. So we're going to start thinking about career climbing frames rather than career ladders. So once you move into industry, if you're considering a move into industry, it's very unlikely that you will stay on one career path. It's highly likely that you will move, and that's certainly been my experience when people have moved into industry, and then when they've stayed, very few people are in the same job in 5 years or in 10 years or in 15 years. When you're starting off, and if you look at all of the options that James took us through, it's quite a scary place, because there's lots and lots of things to think about, and it's thinking, oh, I don't really know what I want to do. My key tip here is look for job content over job title. So job titles don't mean a huge amount. Lots of different companies use job titles differently. So senior scientist in one company is not going to be the same as senior scientist in another. So look past the job title and look at the job content, and look for roles that are going to make you want to throw the duvet back and get out of bed in the morning, because you're going to have to do it on lots of mornings. So pick a role that excites you, and pick a role that lets you be your best. So key thinking behind this are having to think about, what are my strengths? And by that, I mean, what gives you energy? So what are the things that you really enjoy doing, that you get energized from, that you feel a real sense of accomplishment and you feel a real sense of fulfillment? If you have a job that allows you to do that, you will get out of bed every morning. I've put a little note in here, just a little beware of. So just beware of learned behaviors. Learned behaviors are things that we're usually really good at because we have to be, for whatever reason that is, but actually they don't bring us much joy, and we probably quite hate them. And if someone was to come and tell us, you don't have to do this anymore, we'd be delighted. So those aren't your strengths, those are learned behaviors. Your strengths are things that you really, really enjoy doing, and you get a great, tremendous positive mindset from them. If you're not sure what they are, and it's quite hard for a lot of people to know what they are, a good starting point is to think, what does a good day look like? So reflect over the last few years, and hopefully there's been more than one good day. Hopefully you'll have a plethora of good days that you can pick from. But pick a good day and think about, what were the things I was doing on that day? that made it good. It could have been that you were working with lots of different teams, maybe doing a collaboration session, coming up with new ideas. Maybe you initiated a new project. Maybe you completed a project. Maybe you were working on your own and you were given 3 hours of uninterrupted time to do some really deep thinking about a technical issue that was bothering you, and now you found a solution. Just have a think about what a good day looked like for you, and think about what made it good. You know, I came away from it and I felt energized. And this is not about bouncing around with buckets of energy, rather ready to do 2 or 3 body coach workouts. This is a real sense of, this was a really good day, putting you in a really positive mindset. The chances are, when you've picked that good day, you've utilized your strengths, and that's a great thing to find in a new role, moving into a new organization. The other thing to have a think about is, once you have an idea of what role you want to move into, also have a think about the type of organization you'd like to work for. So there are startups, there are scale-ups, there are medium-sized environments, and there are large corporate organizations, and they'll all offer you different things. Just have a think about what works for you. If you want to work with a very large experienced team, so you've got lots of people that you can draw on ideas. If you want some global opportunities, a big global corporate is probably going to be something that you would want to look at. The downside is they tend to be less agile, as they're a bit more bureaucratic. So idea generation, kind of getting an idea actually into practice, can take a little bit longer. If you want to be the expert, and if you want to be setting the strategic direction and being given the opportunity to have a go at a little bit of everything, a startup is a great environment. It's very rapid, very dynamic, it's all hands on deck, but you don't have the access necessarily to that wealth of experience that you would get in a more corporate setting. It also doesn't have the security of some of the larger companies. Kind of a middle ground would be a scale up, so a company that's gone through the startup phase, so they've established a good customer base, they've got a good product strategy, and they're on the way to getting somewhere. So they will have kind of smaller teams established, but still have great scope for growth. There's still lots of stuff that they want to do. There's still a great chance to get involved in lots of different things. The downside is they won't have as many management and training and development opportunities established yet, but they will be on their way to getting there. So thinking about the role, also think about the type of environment that you think is going to work for you. And then finally, when you're thinking about what your strengths are, and really building on what James was saying, thinking about that role that's going to get you out of bed in the morning, and there's lots of different options. Just think about the core focus of that role. Now, you will do a little bit of everything. Every role involves communication, every role involves negotiation, and most of the roles involve technical content as well. So have a think about, what do I want the core focus to be? If it's relationships, business development, product management, account management are definitely the way to go. Business development used to be sales. It's not now. What I would say, it's a lot about strategic partnerships. So don't be worried about business development. It's a very much a growing area. And the business development professionals that I've worked with in the past have been very focused on identifying good partnerships for business to business contracts. So it's a great area to look at. I'm conscious of time, and I know people coming back in. If you do want to stay in the technical side of things, even here, there are lots of different opportunities. So research scientist would be looking at, can we make something work? Can we prove this technology? Development scientist is, can we make it work every time we run this protocol? Can we make it work when we put it into manufacture? So again, lots and lots of different opportunities. And what I would say is, definitely at OXGENE, our current head of marketing, our current senior project manager have all got technical backgrounds, and they have all moved into different positions across the lab. So there are plenty and plenty of opportunities for you to consider. So really, definitely have a look at commercial environments, go and have a look at industry, but fundamentally pick a role that you think is going to want to get you out of bed in the morning, and that's something that will get you out of bed every morning. Thank you.
Great. So thank you to Next Phase and to OXGENE. I think that was just really helpful to really cover this topic from multiple different angles. So we're going to go ahead with some questions. So from Carly Bliss, a research fellow from Cardiff, Is it possible to transition back and forth between academia and industry throughout your career, or is it viewed as more of a one-way street?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think that you can go back and forth. I'm just having to think back through some CVs that I've seen that yes, there are those who've gone from one to the other. So certainly not a negative. Certainly, I think you'll find most recruiters will be looking at a CV for your skill sets and application and be less worried about the background. So in short, yes.
Great.
I would echo that by saying that I really liked Circa's point about it not being a ladder, but more of a climbing frame. I think if you think of that, there are lots of opportunities to move across diagonally and so on. To think of it, visualize it very much like that within organisations, but also back and forth between academia and industry. We've seen a lot of examples of people doing that.
However, I would add to that and say once you're in industry, it's very rare that you will look back, typically speaking. So it is possible. It's a lot harder to, well, not in cell and gene, but historically, it's a lot harder to get into industry in the first place. But when you are, people do tend to stay once they get a flavour for it, in my experience.
I think I would only add to that and say, as long as your motivations are clear in terms of why you moved from one to the other, then I think that's absolutely fine. It's just being able to describe it very well to whoever's interviewing you. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So from Nora Clark from Imperial College, this is for James. Can you clarify who senior applicant is outside of lab roles? For example, would a recent PhD student or postdoc with no industry experience be a senior applicant in communications/IP?
Oh, that's a good question. Potentially, yes. There are examples where they've had sort of a position that needs that sort of stronger technical understanding. So they are certainly there. And yes, it is possible, definitely.
Great. And then Lisa Macarthur from University of Glasgow. Many industry positions don't specify a salary range. What is the best way to approach this to ensure the position is at the correct level that you were looking for?
Yeah, lots of companies won't do this because they don't want to give away the information to their competitors in terms of what they're asking. Contact the HR department, contact the careers department and ask them for a salary range. They should be able to provide you with at least that. And I would have no problem if someone said, what's the salary range for this role, to be able to give that information.
Great. So from me as well, I have a few questions. So is there any truth in the opinion that you should move into industry straight after your PhD rather than doing a postdoc and then moving? Is there a preference on when you should move if you know you would like to move?
From my point in terms of recruiting for roles, no, it just, again, it comes back to motivation. And I want to know, why are you choosing now to move? I would never ask, why did you not choose 2 years ago? I would ask, why now? You know, what's driving this? You know, what's the move? So no, from my point of view, no, not at all.
Yeah, and all I can do is echo that. Definitely wouldn't be an issue. You look very much at the now and the motivations and understanding why you're looking for in the skill sets. Not a problem at all.
Great, that's good to know. So that's been then. So I've got some further questions. So next phase in particular, do you ever get any individuals approaching you who are unsure about which role is best suited to them, and how can you help them decide which role they may be suited at?
Yeah, it is common. It happens day in, day out, because I mean, we've just gone through loads of opportunities, and Circa alluded to it as well. So where do you want to go? How do you know what you want to move into? And really the best way to that is talk. You'll find that we'll generally available to just run through what you're looking for, go through what skills that you have that say what we're recruiting for now or in the future, in the past, will align to. And there's lots of resources we can point to online. I'm sure when it comes like Circa at OXGENE as well, they'll also provide that opportunity to discuss it with you. So yeah, always happy to chat to it. It's complex, we understand, and yeah, that's part of our jobs.
Some of the other organisations I've worked in run graduate programmes, and this used to be focused on students who were coming straight after a master's or their first degree, but actually a lot of companies now are expanding it to people who are coming out with a PhD, and a lot of them are rotational. So you will go in on a graduate programme and you will rotate around the different departments, the different functions, to get a sense of the business, and then decide, matched with business requirements, which area is the one that you fundamentally you want to spend some more time in. And that's a really good opportunity. It's a great way to get to know the business, so they're worth looking at.
Yeah, because I think speaking how I feel about it, it's hard to know if you are suited for these roles because you don't come across them in academia. And we've been in the MSc, PhD, so it is really hard to know, am I good at those? But I think the way you guys highlighted skills, that's a good way of thinking about it. Is, do you have those skills already? Are those the sort of things you want to pursue?
Yeah.
Would you say, therefore, Robin, from your perspective, that there's almost a potential fear that if somebody says, I'm going to commit to going down this route, that they're almost, there's no going back from it, which I guess comes back to that initial question as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is also a fear that everything you do, every move you make will then be questioned at a later time. Why did you move then? Did you go that way? Why are you coming back to academia? So I do think there is a bit of a fear of that. But we are encouraged to hear that it seems that one-way road doesn't seem to be such a thing anymore. So that's really good to hear. I think that puts a lot of our worries at rest.
I think if you think of it that in an interview situation, chances are, yes, you will be asked about some of the choices that you've made. But actually, if you think each of those choices that you've made for a particular reason at a particular time because of whatever was going on in your life at that point, whatever was exciting you about potential career opportunity and so on. I think as long as you're clear in your own mind about the thought process that you were going through, and you can talk fluently about that and talk about how you've learned and how you've grown through making those decisions, then fantastic. I think in the vast majority, particularly these types of companies, the vast majority of interviewers will have probably made a similar move themselves. So they'll be interested in the journey that person has made rather than asking them why they didn't do certain things. It'd be more of a curiosity as to what was it about this opportunity that caught your eye in the first place. And I think there shouldn't be too much of a fear, but I can understand where it comes from.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. So we've got quite a few questions. A lot of people were asking about the PhD or postdoc, when's better time to move, but we've answered that. So Thea, do you believe that COVID-19 had a negative impact on recruiting job openings for the industry?
Not really. So, of course, when COVID hit, there's a lot of uncertainty, but how things would continue to develop, how roles would be filled, how decisions would be made. But so I know Circus in the I'll probably add to this, but from our perspective, interview processes are still running as they were before. Certainly, more decisions will be made following video interviews as well, and that's the norm. Of course, there are restrictions, but it doesn't mean you can't go onto site to see laboratories. Companies have come up with very safe, very good ways of ensuring you still have access to seeing what environment you're moving into, what it looks like, how what equipment is in the laboratories, is it in a shed or is it actually a properly full building and so on. So you certainly initially was a little bit uncertain, but that was quickly removed within a few weeks. Certainly during that lockdown period, we were all still making placements, still helping people find jobs. So thankfully, no, we've been able to evolve and adapt.
Good, yeah, that's great to hear. So we've got Nikki Faulkner from Imperial College. What is the standard application process like? Are there assessments or any other steps between the CV check and an interview, for example?
How long is a piece of string, right? Every company has a different way. My practice, but do jump in here, James, the way that we usually do things is an application would go in and have an initial screening. to see that, you know, it did match job description, it would go through to the recruiting manager, and it would usually be telephone interview and then now face-to-face via Zoom or via Teams, and potentially a second one using quite often sometimes a presentation is required. But that's more about, you know, is someone able to communicate, and are they able to describe their technology to someone who might not be necessarily a specialist in that area. So it's looking at a different range of skills. Some companies do use psychometric testing as standard, some don't. It really depends on the company. Does that sound fair, James, in terms of
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. Depends on the role, company, and the process they've designed. So sometimes you can find yourself just phone interview followed by a video. Other times might have a little task in between. But the key thing is every recruiter you speak with or HR professional will guide you through that process to let you understand what's expected, what's coming to give you the best chance of success and have a good interview. Because ultimately, you as a candidate, but also the company want you to have a good interview, so that everyone's getting the best out of the process to make the best decisions.
Great. Shivani Patel from Imperial College. Is there a particular time when applications open, or is it a process that takes place all year round? I guess that's company dependent, but perhaps we can hear from you, Circa, from OXGENE.
Yeah, so what we tend to do is we'll kind of open a vacancy and we'll take applications. We don't tend to put closing dates on them. We tend to kind of keep rolling so applications can come in. Some companies they'll put, you know, you must submit an application between this time, and then they'll review them at the end. Personally, as recruiting manager, I'd hate that. I can't think of anything worse than having to sit down and review 20 to 200 CVs in one go. I'd be tearing my eyeballs out. So a lot of companies do tend to stagger it. So unless there's a closing date, put an application in. If you want to get a heads up, insider information, call the HR team and tell them you're about to submit an application, because then they're aware of your name and they'll look out for it. So that's another way to do it. Just find a really good question to ask them about the role and pick up the phone and say, I'd just like to ask you about this, I'm such and such, and then they'll give you an answer and you can say something wonderful about, that's great, that totally matches my experience, I'll get my application in now. And your HR person will look out for it. So, yeah.
Great tip. I think further to that, so again, Shivani Patel has asked, is it necessary to tick all the boxes in the job description when you're applying, or should you not worry hugely about that?
No, focus on what you can do rather than what you can't do. The recruiting manager will want everyone that ticks every box. There's no such thing, because if you find that person, they'd come in and they'd stay in the role for about 2 weeks because they'd be really bored. So yeah, my focus is always just focus on everything you can do rather than what you can't, and put your application in.
Definitely.
Great advice there. I guess from next phase, my question would be, is there one job role or sector you feel there's a real gap in the market for? You have very few candidates that you're able to fill those roles for.
All of them. Yes, all of them. Generally speaking, we are always looking for candidates. They're not always, you always easy to find. In terms of being a bit more specific within that, I tend sometimes, yes, that data science springs to mind, certainly straight away, but also it's when we get these niche areas. For example, like one that was managing very recently was a flow cytometry specialist, and it had to be really specialist, really niche area. So from the outside, so from your perspective, I would say realistically, all of them. The companies are crying out for it. Yeah, all of them.
Yeah, I would second that as well. The beauty of the cell and gene world that we're in, again, the whole of the sector, it's still tiny really when you compare it to the big machine that's big pharma. However, it's established enough now to be secure, particularly in the UK, and to be a thing. It's no longer a question of is it going to happen. It is happening, and it's happening right now. But also it's experiencing, some of the facts that I reeled off earlier, we're experiencing exponential growth that has kind of started in the last couple of years and is just snowballing, I won't say out of control, that's not the right term to use, but it's snowballing rapidly. So, I mean, manufacturing is the hot topic right now in the industry. You know, how can we keep up with all the upscale manufacturing, with all these clinical trials that are making it into phase 2, phase 3, products that are now looking to come to market? I think there's something like 90 odd products expected in the next couple of years to be submitted to the FDA and EMA and things like that. So the whole industry is growing rapidly. Manufacturing is a hot topic right now, but the opportunities across all of the functions are phenomenal right now.
What I would add to that as well, because I appreciate there's been a lot of information to take in over the course of this afternoon, and what we'll do is we'll make the presentation slides available for people to download. So on our Next Phase website, but also put some things up on social media too. So if people want to refer back to those, then you're very, very welcome to get access to them.
I guess further to that, I know you mentioned, Steve, that the UK hold about 12% of the industry, but what other countries is this field sort of big in as well? I guess America's a big one, but any other industries you know of?
So it's very much a global thing. It's mostly the Western world, as is the nature of most industries. America is much larger. There's a lot of really, really good science and tech coming out of US academia. Boston's the big hub over there. Everyone's trying to set up in Boston in cell and gene. There's lots going on. However, you know, that's because of their sheer scale. Whilst we are tiny, even versus our European, you know, brothers and sisters and cousins, the fact that we're leading the way with 12%, you know, versus the rest of the world is phenomenal, really. And that really comes down to the fact that we, as a nation, grabbed the ball by the horns very early and said, we're going to develop the infrastructure to make this happen, which is still very much in the making, but it is everywhere else. I think Canada tried to do a similar thing before us and it didn't quite work. Germany tried to do a similar thing, didn't quite work. But the infrastructure surrounding it we've got here is what's really given us the foundation to lead the way. So you're in the right place for it here. It's happening worldwide, but you're in the right place here, certainly. A lot of US money is starting to come here as well now.
Great. I've got a further question from Nora Clark. She said, as a PhD student, when should you apply for a position? Will many positions expect you to start straight away? So I guess how early do you need to apply for these positions?
I can tell you. I can tell you from our perspective. So industry standard at the moment tends to be 3-month notice period. So it's hard to find good candidates, and it's, you know, when it comes to offer, they've been through rigorous interview process. So we would never not give somebody a role or make an offer because they had a notice period. If you're finishing your PhD, it's a discussion to be had. So you might not want to start until you finish your PhD, or you might want to and agree some time so that you've got some time around doing your defense and things. So not necessarily a bad time. If you're looking at a graduate program, you will need to get your application in early. So graduate programs tend to start in September, and they quite often start recruiting the year before. So it's worth having a look. But no, companies very rarely will not continue with an offer because of your availability.
Okay, that's really good to know. I guess also to that, would is it ever seen as a negative to have a bit of a gap after a PhD? Say you took a few months out to travel or whatever. Would that be seen as negative or?
No, I think it's great. It gives you something to talk about in an interview. Again, it's motivations. For me, it's what did you learn? You know, why did you decide to take a break? What did you do with your time? What have you learned from it? What skills have you gained? You know, it goes on as you progress in your career. Some people will have career breaks for a whole host of reasons, be it for maternity, or even, you know, a dad wants to take some time out and spend, you know, time with their kids, or they want to go and do something different for a year. Just be clear on what you've learned from it, and then why you're now, again, it's that motivations. Why am I now coming back to work? Why am I now applying?
Great. I don't know if you had any sort of maybe final comments on the feelings towards more flexible working hours. Is that coming in, or is it very much 9 to 5 still?
No comment.
Oh, it's the flexible one. so I can tell you what my view is. My view has always been you focus on output and not input, right? So it's what people can produce. And if some people that takes them a week, and if it's some people it takes them 4 days, that's fine. What I think the global pandemic has done for lots of companies, it's forced them into allowing their staff to homework because they have to. And for a lot of companies, they haven't seen a decrease in productivity or in terms of what companies are in terms of what the individuals are delivering. It's also, for me, it's tremendous that people feel they have a much better work-life balance. And I would much rather that people had that and continue to be productive and met the needs of the business. So I think you'll probably find your HR departments are pushing for it. It's still a little bit of an uphill struggle sometimes with some managers. I'm sure James and Steve are going, but a lot of companies, there's a lot of companies that are getting there now. So yeah, it's very hard to say no, you can't work from home when there's we're going to be 12 months at the end of this at least where people can work from home. So yeah, watch this space. We don't know yet. Ask us in 6 months.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit more, it's becoming quite normal during interview processes for that to be asked, and for companies actually even to set that out from the very beginning. This role involves you can work from home this many days and things like that. So yeah, it's becoming more and more normal.
Yeah,
great. Well, I think that sort of brings us to the end of our questions. Any further comments that you guys would like to say, or are we? No, great. Well, I just would love to thank you so much, all of you guys, Steve, James, and Circa. Thank you so much for all the effort you've put into this talk. I think it's been so useful, particularly for me. I hope for everyone else that's watching. So really appreciate your time. So thank you very much. Look out for the next BSGCT seminar when we advertise it shortly. Thanks for watching.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much.